My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to continue from where I left the last week on vision of God. Mahan has spoken about vision of God. I'm going to give you the perspective of my understanding of the vision of God based on the practicing Mahan's teachings, Mahan's meditation, and also Mahan's philosophy over the last more than 40 years. What did I learn from Mahan's teachings? And today is a kind of a auspicious day in the sense that for us Malaysians, we celebrate the Merdeka Day, the 31st of August. And the timely topic today is also a door within the self, which is the liberation. And I'll speak about what liberation or independence actually means. Right. So, as I always start off with, the vision of God, why some people can get it, why some cannot, and this picture here tells us about where we are looking. If we look at the wrong place, we may not see God in its entirety. We may have a limited perspective of God, or sometimes we may not see God at all or get the vision of God. And here it says very nicely that if we fix our eyes not on what is seen but what is unseen, again it says that what is seen sometimes is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So it all depends on the vision that we focus on. And here great saints and sages and Mahans teachers on looking at the unseen. When we know the unseen very well, we also know the seen very well. And the scenery in our lives becomes very clear. So I want to continue. I spoke about in the last few classes that there are multiple doors within our mind. The mind that sometimes the doors of materiality opens up, and we are conditioned to see the material world in the way it is. And sometimes the mind is so drenched in this materiality that it's unable to, it gets confused and it thinks it is the material identity. And what is really interesting is that the mind thinks it is that material personality with all the limitedness, birth, death, sustenance, troubles, cause and effect. So the mind is caught up in this, state of material substratum. It's unable to break away from that gravity of materiality to the gravity of spirituality. And the great saints and sages show us how to transition from that gravity of materiality to the gravity of spirituality. And as the gravity of spirituality, the pull is much more stronger. We see that we understand the material world, the alluring nature of material world, and how to transcend that. And this is what Mahans show us, that within us there is this component called self, that spiritual identity. As a matter of fact, the mind has windows to that spiritual identity. When all the doors open, the mind realizes that it is that spiritual identity and not the material identity, which is limited. So I spoke about how Mahan's teachings, Mahan's meditation, the Kundalini meditation, Mahan's I God philosophy, understanding that in a more universal and comprehensive way, enable me to understand the self very well, understand all the masters, the scriptures, all the religious teachings that spoke about this self, that eternal, substratum that all of us have. And I want to share with you the experience of that self. It's not an abstract experience. It's not a theoretical experience. It is an experiential experience of that self. So one can ask the question, okay, what does one experience in that self? Right? The self is supposed to be formless, dimensionless, eternal, omnipresent, all the the words that we use to describe this universal identity, which we call God. So if our mind, if that divinity is a part of our DNA, then all these qualities should emanate. All these, values of this universal personality needs to be embedded in our in our DNA, should be in our DNA. Why is it that we don't experience it? So here it is, that because our focus is somewhere else. When we focus on that material body, then all the limitedness of the material body personality is experienced. By the way, the material personality is also powered by the spiritual personality. But our lens is focused on the materiality, so we see all the limitedness. As we go deeper, we see that we get glimpses of that self. And sometimes it is very difficult to describe what this experience is. And this is where we have to introspect, contemplate, reflect, and meditate. What is our experience? And most people experience a nice feeling, a nicety, very, blissful feeling, and they leave it at that. The Mahans are like scientists. They say, okay, I had this experience. Is it a placebo effect or is it a real effect, right? So let me scrutinize this. Why am I experiencing this? And they probe and probe and probe like a scientist to say, look, is this real? What is real? What is reality? And why is this thought or experience there? So as we, as Mahan's Kundalini meditation, slowly helped the mind, at least helped me in, quietening the mind. There's a sense of clarity that came in, a sense of, wanting to go deeper to understand this realm, and it gave me the tools to be able to explore this realm over the many years. And slowly, the substratum, this experience of the substratum started opening up the doors of the self. The mind was fixed with the material personality. Over time, the door slowly started opening up. And the supreme experience of the self that is described in a very abstract way, in a very kind of a, way that is difficult for the mind to comprehend. Slowly, the mind, working with the intellect, started probing, going deeper, became more silent. And over the many years, the glimpses of the self started showing up in the mind because the bandwidth is expanding, the bandwidth is deepening. It is able to express the unexpressible. It found the words to describe it, at least an approximation of the words that we human beings, we Homo sapiens, have developed over the many thousands of years. The mind was able to use what humanity has developed, language, words, to be able to describe it. It may not be perfect, to one word to describe everything, but it found, at least for me, an approximation of words that describe this divinity or this self. And I started writing this over time, the experiences. As I was reading all the great saints in the scriptures, these words started jumping up. Before, it was just normally like reading a normal book and I say, okay, great, but then I started going deeper and started seeing certain words starting to become more profound. The mind was starting to hold on to this word. The mind was able to experience this word and tie to the experience of that self, an approximation of all the words that describe the supreme experiences, right? So over the course of 40 over years of practicing this, the first door that opened to me is that supreme experiences, which Mahan spoke about in his I God book, Summa Irukum Sugam, this unconditional joy and happiness. But more words started coming out, the silence, the serenity, the Shraddha. You became more focused. The spiritual realm started becoming more and more clearer. There's a distinction between, matter and energy. and something that is transcendental to matter and energy. That's what we call the spirit. Slowly, the words were starting to describe that self for me. And ultimately, the first door showed me that within me, there's a great sustainer, right? It sustains us through everything, through the waking state, through the dream state, through the deep sleep state, and the awakening state. It sustains us through, both the sukha dukkha's. It sustains us through good times and challenging moments. It sustains us and makes us transcendental to all these birth, death cycles. It is that which is untouched, unblemished by this material world. Yet it is an experiencer, of this material world. As that was happening, the second door also started opening up. Started getting glimpses of that enlightening experience. The mind started inquiring, wanting to know what is this bliss, not just be in this joy of bliss, but want to know, is this a placebo effect or is it real, right? And the inquiry started, like Mahan, probing, is this a temporary state? Why is it that I'm experiencing this in deep meditation? But when I come out to the world, it's different, right? So that inquiring mind started understanding, how does one experience this throughout, the waking state, this, while engaging the world in the deep sleep, the dream state. And slowly I started seeing the explorer. I was very excited. I was excited about astronomy, physics. That is the time I was going to university, mathematics, abstract mathematics. Realize, amazing mathematics is amazing innovation of humanity, and and it's something that is really magical to describe the entire universe, right? There was an expansion of my horizon. You started getting glimpses of that. When you understand things, you get this, burst of quantum of elevating experiences. There was enthusiasm, and things started evolving, as I spoke about in the last satsang. And finally, you attain this excellence, the sarva dakshina. Everything, you really, really look at it very, very carefully, scrutinize it, know it before you say anything, before you put it to practice. And you see the awesome beauty and excellence is not only within you, but in everything around you. And it's not surprising, because when the lens, the mind, when this door opens up, the mind becomes inoculated to this enlightening, excellent experiences. And the mind sees everything with that sarvadakshina, that excellence. Right? There's no moments that you see that, there's a limitedness. And I spoke about this in the last satsang. I won't go into detail. If you want to know more about the second door, refer back to the last satsang. I want to then come up. So when you have that, the experience, that supreme experiences, glimpses, and you start getting the enlightening experience, something very interesting starts happening. The third door opens up. This is the liberating experience. Today we celebrate Independence Day, right? A sense of independence that comes, dawns upon us. We're not caught up by this material world, material identity. Slowly, everything starts bending to the will of what we want to experience, right? So this liberation takes place. And I have some nice quotes of Mahan, and before that, this beautiful quote of Rumi says that, why do you stay in a prison when the door is so wide open? Actually, the door is open to us. Only thing is that we straitjacket our mind to this material identity, material personality, and we try all our life to break away from it. And Rumi and Mahan and others say, actually, the door is wide open. We are not seeing in the right place, right? And here it is. Mahan says that, when he experienced this, he said beautifully, he says, I renounce my land, my house, my kith and kin, right? Everything material, my place and my religion. I've avoided giving birth or taking birth. He's describing that self that is transcendental, I've avoided becoming a corpse, transcendental to death. At will I remain, at will I am, because I've attained the seat of wisdom. What he's describing here is actually that attainment of that self, that seed of wisdom, right? And that liberating, and in that joy, he's expressing this liberation in him. He's not caught up by this material wealth, nor the material relationship, nor the spiritual or the religious, the spiritual pursuits, right? All this, at least in a kind of a limited way. He says, I avoided the birth and the taking birth, transcendental to life, avoiding becoming the corpse at will, he says, I realize. So this is what is described in all the scriptures. And he says that, on great masters, he said, this ultimate purpose of our pursuit of, spirituality is to attain the seat of wisdom. So here he speaks about, this transcendental nature of, and what does it mean, actually, this liberating experiences? What are the glimpses of this? What happens when this door opens up? And it's very interesting that, he speaks about we become more quieter, and we become a listener, not to the material world. Yes, we understand the material, but to the divinity in us. Right? And Swamiji always says, Utru, Utru, Noko, Noko. That means the intensity of listening very carefully to the vibrations and the supreme, the beautiful melody of the soul. It can only happen if we become a good listener. Most people want to talk and do things, but they don't experience that self. He says, the liberating experiences come when our mind becomes attuned to this inner voice, the voice of silence, the voice of, the reverberation of this divinity in us. Right? So this is why that conversation every day we need to have. We have 24 hours, right? Every day, if you allocate half a day to have that conversation or the, dialogue with the divinity, and we listen very carefully, we see that every day, every moment, we become connected. And this is what the mind's door opens up, to be able to be more quiet and listen to the reverberation or the beautiful divine melody of that divinity. This is Bhagavan's Gita. Listen very carefully. Mahan always say, Unarva Gavani Pa, he says, listen very carefully to the inner voice. So this is what happens when you become more quieter and you feel more, inspired. So this is what happens in that first glimpse. Hey, I feel so quiet. I feel so serene. I can feel the vibration. And this is why people have that experience of, the Om sound or the reverberation or the Unarvu or, the electromagnetic field, because the mind has become very quiet. That too is still, one has to go deeper. The second aspect is that something very interesting happens. As I was documenting, we get a wider and more deeper understanding of divinity. And our perspective of life starts changing. We become more and more liberal, more and more inclusive, more and more open, more and more willing to learn. And this is something that not just you stay in your own tradition, you transcend the traditions. You look at the values of humanity. You look at the values of spirituality. It's no more the form, but it's about the substance. And the substance is, that divinity that is powering everything. We stop being dogmatic. Before we have a particular strong hold on or strong way of thinking, this is the way. But slowly, that understanding becomes more and more porous, and things, the very hard line we take starts melting. We become more liberal, we become more inclusive, more accommodative, to learning from everything. So you never stop learning, you become an explorer, and you share ideas, you learn from others, and it becomes a continuous learning experience. And the moment you become dogmatic, you shut from learning. Something very interesting happened, this suddenly you start getting leadership qualities. The things that you were waiting for others to do, now you have that confidence in yourself to be able to take on that role, even how small or how big that role is. You see? And I have this term that keeps reverberating in me. the Chief Enlightenment Officer, CEO, that leadership quality in us starts showing up, right? And you see in all the scriptures, that's what the great saints and the prophets do. They were actually Chief Enlightenment Officers. Some of them have been there for thousands of years, the knowledge, even though their mortal body has disappeared, but their knowledge has continued for thousands of years. So that leadership quality starts off with oneself. We become the CEO of our own self. So this is something that is very interesting that I experienced, that, in that liberation, that leader in me started showing up, that, I take responsibility of liberating myself. That's what my Mahan are showing. That's what, the gurus were showing. That's what the prophets are showing, that when you touch this, you should be able to experience that liberation and the leadership. You are taking the leadership role. So you're not waiting for someone else to do it for you. You become proactive. You become the enlightenment officer. When you start with yourself, then you start saying, okay, I know how now to, illumine myself. What I don't know, I know how to discover. If I don't know, I can find out. That explorer inner starts coming up. So the leadership, the spiritual leadership shows up. This is what I call the CEO qualities. When I run this program for corporates, I call it, you cannot be a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, if you are not enlightened. So the Chief Enlightenment Officer needs to show up first before you have executive power. Executive power, not just your corporation, but executive power for your own life. Executive power, so you become CEO for your family, your organizations that you're working, the community, the society, and so on. And you get that strength in you, that liberation, that nothing stops you, right? Something very interesting also started taking place, as I was going. There are times that people hold on to things. There are times that people, carry grudges, carry, complex things that they cannot let go. And you see that, and there's a lot of knots in the mind, right? So when you start opening this door, slowly you learn to let go. It's okay, never mind. And I'm not going to let this straitjacket my progress. So, and this is the glimpses of the liberating quality that we have. We start showing up. When we start letting go of things, we see that, you have to clear out some things before you can bring something in, right? So this quality of when we vacate all this drunkenness, all these things that keeps our mind constricted, we see that the mind has an opportunity to expand, become more enlightened. The CEO starts showing up. So this is letting go. Many people cannot let go of things. Even how small, you can't let go, it will keep you behind. And that's what I learned. The other one is that live to let live. It's okay. There are times that people have, made you angry, or given you a hard time, or even made your life miserable, right? And you cannot let that, keep you behind in seeing your full self in its full entirety. So there's this term called live to let live, right? So let them, it's okay, let go, never mind, let them, maybe they won the battle, it's okay, let them be happy. You know that who you are, so you have full confidence of yourself. I see in many places people cannot let go. They cannot, let other people win. They always have to have the last word. No, let it live to let live. Let people, progress. If they feel happy, it's okay. Let them, The other one is live to outlive everything. And this is also linked to that fourth, fifth, and sixth. They're all interrelated. Letting go is one thing. Enabling and allowing others to feel as though, okay, they feel that they got their peace, and they feel, oh, it's okay, you're full of that spiritual knowledge, to bless them and live to outlive. If you don't let go and live to let live, you would not be able to outlive everything, right? So, and this is the part that I learned from Mahan's teachings. Is Mahan always says, "Narada dalam nanmiki, nadakapordum nanmiki." What he's saying here is that the 4, 5, and 6 is so important. They're interrelated. He says we have to learn to let go. We have to learn to give people space. Don't corner them and bring the worst out of them. We have to allow them to give some room for them to in here we say face-saving way, or enable them to progress, even though if it has an adverse impact on you, but you're not impacted by it. It's okay. You're able to absorb it and let them bless them. And the sixth one is actually live to outlive everything. So even that too will pass. So when we don't live to outlive everything and we hold on to things, we cannot progress. And this is what this door is telling us, that when we experience something, we become enriched by it, we become enlightened by it. And in that enlightening process itself, we will learn to liberate ourselves from it. As long as we don't go through that continuum, liberation is very difficult and we find it hard to progress further. So this is something that I learned when this door opened up in many, many circumstances where I couldn't let go. There's always that feistiness, and you see that the meditation and all the experiences are adversely impacted. The day I let go, the day I say, okay, never mind, give them chance, lah, never mind. And you see that, you can transcend that and you are able to progress further. And this, when 4, 5, and 6 happens, a sense of lightness happens, beautiful, the mind becomes frictionless. You're no more impacted by anything, by any person or any event or sukha dukkha. There's a sense of lightness that takes place. The mind becomes so light, not burdened by many things. The mind becomes frictionless. The mind, when you see that, helium gas is lighter than air. So when you fill up the helium in your balloon with helium gas, the balloon will just go up, very high because it's lighter than air. In that same way, when our mind is lighter than the material experiences, our mind starts soaring very high, become more and more transcendental, to be able to observe the thoughts, its limitedness, and its power, and so on. And that's the door that is so important, but it comes with number 4, 5, and 6 to get that lightness, that awesome, transcendental, qualities. And this is the next part. When the mind becomes light, the mind becomes limitless. The mind can soar at a high level even to be able to attain God realization, right? And this is the interconnection between all this relationship. As you do one, the knock-on effects starts taking place. That's why I say it's effortless, because when you start one, the chain reaction starts. When you start one positive things, one enriching things, the chain reaction starts opening up, and slowly you start seeing everything gives you that, multi-dimensional perspective of that self. And something awesome happens, which is when all these things happen, you have a love for life. You don't run away from life. Even how challenging it is, you love it. It becomes an unconditional love. And sometimes I see, very, very poor people, they have these qualities and they're so happy that even they have old rice, they'll put it in the water, they put a little bit of salt and they put a little bit of chili and they crush it and they eat it, and it's so tasty. Some of us have eaten this, when we were very young. So even how small or how, simple something is, it gives you an awesome taste, awesome experience, because there's a focus, there is a letting go, so that you have that experience that you're having now. Is your mind is fully, focused on it. That Shraddha is there. And you see that when the Shraddha or being in the present is there, whatever experience, so being in the present there, whatever experience becomes a present, which is a gift, right? So, and this is something that I learned from Mahan's teachings, that even how limited or how simple something is, when the Shraddha is there, we have that full experience. It becomes a gift. And this is the liberating experience that I learned from this. And the last one is, this is what liberation is. Liberation is actually, being not affected by anything. You experience everything, you learn from it, and ultimately, in all our lives, we cannot hold on to anything. This is part of life. We learned there's nothing that we can hold on to, right? Including our body. And when we learn this, the only thing that we have with us is the experiencer to experience this material world, outlive it, and finally there will come a stage where our body will also start transitioning to going back to its own state, which is all the minerals, and we assembled it during life, and there's a disassembling will take place, and that disassembling sometimes is called disease and disorder, and the aging process. And you see that there will be a day, that one fine day, we will be liberated from this material world, through death and so on. But while living, we can also still live in a liberation way. And that's what gives us the awesome beauty of understanding that self through this practice, that you would be liberated in death. You go back to the samadhi state, but you can still experience life in this most awesome liberation way while living. And for that, one needs to be a good listener. One needs to embrace a liberal perspective of life, not caught up with dogmatic belief. One needs to unlock that chief enlightenment officer, the leadership, the leader within ourselves, the knower within ourselves. And all that should enable us to let go. So there are times that we have to let go things. We have to outlive things. We have to let live things around us, people around us, to experience the lightness, the limitedness, the unconditional love for life, and the reverence, respect, and reverence for life, our life and that of others. And ultimately, we attain that final liberation, that as we go through this journey, as we age gracefully, and we are ready to experience no regrets in life, right? The people that we have not seen, see them. The people that we have been upset with, forgive and forget, and enrich that experience. No knots in the mind, so that the mind is peaceful and gracefully age until the final day. And this is what this self realization and enlightening experience, as taught by Mahan and all the great saints and sages that I've been thinking about reading, practicing. And ultimately, that liberation actually means this, right? So, liberation, when I mean spiritual liberation, it is not an escape from life, but a freedom to be of greater service. I always ask this one question. Whenever we buy something, we want to experience something, we pay. When we live in a house, we either pay mortgage or we pay rent. So the one question that you want to ask is that, what do I have to pay to live in this home called the body, right? What can I pay back for enabling me to experience life, this material world, the four-dimensional universe? What can I do to pay back, right? And here it is, by practicing this, I realized that I own a home, I paid mortgage. To live in this house, I have to pay back. And the greatest, you know, freedom that you get is to be of service to everyone, wherever possible, to be of service to others, either, as we are blessed with great resources, knowledge, experiences, we share that, we leave that back. We learn from others, we also give back to others. And when we do that without any expectation, we see that that is the ultimate liberation. The liberation where when people start asking, what is the purpose of life? It's to live a life of purpose. And that's what the liberation is about, to be of great service to everyone. Look out for see there's an orphanage near your home. You don't have to go far away, or an old folks home, or a hospice where, holding somebody's hand and speaking to them and giving them inspiration, reading, there are many people that are lonely, right? There are many people that are lost, lonely, and the least, you know, And part of that is the liberation is to have that immense treasure of the divinity and walk in the footprints of the divinity to be able to be of service to humanity and life itself, nature and others. And that is the ultimate spiritual liberation that I learned from this Jnanavalal Paranjyothi Mahan. He acquired this knowledge from his teacher in a kind of a very different way. He put in the effort to make it simple, simplified it. Although his teacher said, select people and give, he liberally gave it to everybody. That's why we call him Jnanavalal. He gave it liberally to him, and today, thousands of people, if not millions of people, have benefited from it, and I am one of them. And as how Mahan has left behind the knowledge, till the end of my life, I'm hoping that I can, bring his teachings in a more simpler way, in a more pragmatic way, that people in different aspects, different, stages of their life, different professions, are able to, be aware of that self that he spoke about, the Nan, the I that he spoke about, and how by practicing this, to open these doors. As we open these doors, there's an immense power that lies within us. And as one Mahan says, by opening this door, I've attained the seat of wisdom. And you get the glimpses of the divinity, this multi-dimensional, multi-vocabulary divinity that is embedded in us. And as these words that describe the divinity, at least approximately describe this divinity, reverberates in us at every moment, every day, we start seeing that self, the divinity, not just during meditation, but in our waking state, in our engagement state, in every person, in everything that we do. And that's what makes life really exciting and, blissful. Sandosham.